my favorite TV shows, man, is Sports Center, ESPN News, Pardon the Interruption, Around the Horn, quite frankly, Outside the Lines, Baseball Tonight. You know what I mean? I watch sports, dog. That's what I'm trying to say. I watch sports, man. That's what I'm into. Sports. Every sport. Hockey, golf, basketball, football, of course. Baseball. You know what I mean? I got a favorite team, a favorite player in every single sport. I'm not going to answer those questions.
Thank you everyone for tuning in today. You are listening to Q&A on W.C.C.U Radio, Coastal Carolina University's student radio station. I am your host, the one and only Addison Taylor. I just want to tell everyone I hope you're enjoying your day so far. The beautiful sun rays are out. We've been waiting on them. I'm not a weatherman, but it says that we have a high of 82 today. From my time at Coastal, my time down here in Myrtle Beach, I have learned that you cannot trust the weatherman. But I do have on my shorts and my short sleeves, so I hope you're enjoying the day. If you have time to go to the beach, catch some sun rays, be with your loved ones, I hope you're enjoying your day, having a blessed day and a blessed week so far. We have a nice recap and a nice lineup for you today. If this is your first time listening in to Q&A, it's pretty much the most innovative, illustrious, and intelligent sports show on the radio waves today. It's from a newer and a younger perspective and from the younger generation's point of view, the future world leaders. We look at the game differently, and that's what I try to relay, through the messages that I'm showcasing and displaying on Q&A. So thank you for tuning in. However you're tuning in, I appreciate you. Just to give you a quick recap for today, a couple of things on the agenda, a couple of things on the menu. NCAA tournament recap, of course. Who's NBA ready right now from those collective teams that made it to the Final Four and in the tournament as well. Favorites to win the NBA championship. Bo Ryan's comments about the game are something that have been really, really hitting me and touching me. A lot of people have been talking about that and asking me questions about that, so we'll definitely discuss that today as well. The comments made about Chip Kelly thus far, definitely an intriguing story, something that's been kind of, had me with a toss-up with some of the things that people have been saying lately, so we'll go and touch on that topic just a little bit as well. Adrian Peterson met with Roger Goodell the other day. His suspension is actually coming up and should be released in a few days. I think 8 days to be precise. So we'll be talking about that, maybe some future spots for Adrian Peterson. We've touched on that before, but that's a story that's been lingering on. He's a very prominent NFL player, so that's something we're going to keep continuing to talk about. And we also have the Tiger Woods subject, really one of my favorites for today. He will be participating in the par 3 contest and Masters play, so we'll diagnose that, see where his game at is right now and what he could possibly do in that tournament. Just to start, folks, I don't even know where to start. I think I'm going to start with the MLB recap right now. I'm overjoyous because my Braves are 2-0 and they actually look really good. But, we don't want to be biased. You all know my favorites on this show. So we'll make sure to keep it as an overall topic. But if you caught the recap from opening day, some really, really good games, a nice lineup of games were played. I won't take you all the way back because, if you're a fan of the MLB, you've been covering everything and looking at the scoreboards. I'm going to give you a recap of some of the games that were played on yesterday. We had my Atlanta Braves going against the Marlins. Tough game for the Marlins, of course. 14 hits for my Braves, 12 runs, 5 hits for the Marlins, 2 runs for them. It was really, really, really a great overall game for Johnson, A. Wood, and those guys. I'm really happy to see that team come together. They chased Matt Latos with 7 runs in the first inning to rout the Marlins, and that's a good start. And I think that's something that the Braves need to kind of make a collective effort when going into every game. If they can get a start and a good lead in the beginning or just stay competitive from the jump, I think they have a good chance of winning. It's when they get down a lot of runs, sort of like the teams that you see in other sports. They're not a team that's made to come back. We need to start out strong and let that, morale and, the enthusiasm for the first couple of innings translate to the end of the game where it starts getting tight the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. It didn't rain, which was good. The problem for the Miami Marlins, was against Matt Latos. The Atlanta Braves scored 7 runs off Latos in the first inning. beat Miami for the second day in a row, and you can't beat that. The retractable roof at Marlins Park was closed in the aftermath um, of opening day when rain officials caught surprise and forced a 16-minute delay. But the game was played, and that is all that matters. Um, Playing inside the Braves poured it on Latos. He was acquired from Cincinnati in the offseason. He lasted only two-thirds of an inning in the shortest outing of his career. He was booed when he left the game. This was the quote that I got from him. But there's no excuse for putting my team in a 7-run hole and embarrassing myself, throwing the ball down the middle of the plate, he said. It's the worst start I've had in 6 years. It's ridiculous putting my team through that. The outing was the shortest by a starting pitcher in Marlins' debut. According to the stats, Latos failed to record a strikeout for the first time in 154 career starts. The Braves' big inning, including RBI doubles from Freddie Freeman, who I'm excited about, Kristen Betancourt and Chris Johnson, and a two-run single by Angelton Simmons. When those guys get going, some of our guys who are really brought in to facilitate, learn their roles, earn their keep. When they start to play, man, and have confidence, and this goes for, every team in Major League Baseball. You have to get that confidence in your ball club. Your manager has to instill that confidence in, his respective ball club, because, I understand that these are grown men that you're dealing with. But I tell people all the time, and maybe it's just because I'm a communication major and it's, kind of the thesis or the main basis of a lot of the topics that we talk about, but you have to have high morale in everything that you do. If there's not high morale, if there's not cohesiveness, collaboration, going on in the ball club, your ball club's not going to succeed. Um, so I think this is a good start for us. I'm really excited about that. Miami manager Mike Redmond had this to say: Matt just didn't have it. He was up in the zone and they squared quite a few balls up. When your starter goes out early like that, it makes it tough on everybody else. Um, and especially easy on Brave starter Alex Wood. He's starting 1-0. That wasn't what I was expecting. 30 to 40 minutes before I threw the first pitch, Wood said, I got an AB before I even got out there. So you can't beat that. Freeman batted .135 against Miami last year, and Simmons each had 3 of the Braves' 14 hits. New outfielder Cameron Maybin added a 2-run single in the ninth as well. And that's what we need from those guys. We need some of the guys that we really brought in the offseason to, come in and, not pick up the slack, but, do what you were brought in to do. And it's as simple as that. Um, we didn't give away any at-bats, even at the end, Braves manager Freddie Gonzalez said. And that's what got me when I looked at the recap and watched this game, um, is that they didn't give it up. That was what was surprising to me. When I saw the finishing score ended up being 12-2, I was quite excited and ecstatic because, I was really overjoyed that they were able to keep that longevity throughout the game, and that seemed to be a really big problem for us last year. The Braves went 9 for 16 with runners in scoring position. They batted around in the first and again in the ninth when they scored runs off Marlins closer Steve Cishek. I think I'm saying that right. When it was over, the Marlins ERA looked like the list of FM stations. Latos was 94.50. Chisek was 108.00. The offensive outburst was a big chance for the Braves, and a big surprise, actually. They ranked next to last in the majors in runs in 2014, and everybody knows we lost Justin Upton, Jason Hayward, and Evan Gattis during the offseason, so that was a really, really, really big win for us. I'm really excited about that. Next on the list, we had the Baltimore Orioles going against the Tampa Bay Rays. The Orioles won that 6-5 and now move on to 2-0. Gausman is now 1-0 with an ERA of 7.71. A really good game. It's something that I expected from Baltimore. The Orioles are a team that's always seemed to be consistent throughout the year. So I wasn't really surprised too much by that. Um, the Orioles held on after a 4-1 first, beat the Rays 6-5. So when you can come back like that on a team, it's really good. There was really, when you look at it, the game was pretty much close, not for the entire game. There was 4 runs scored by Baltimore in the first, 2 in the second. And really after that, it was dormant from 3 to the ninth inning. So being able to hold Tampa Bay to 5 runs like that was very good. Adam Jones drove in 2 with a double during a 4-run first inning, and the Orioles hung on to beat Tampa Bay, like I said, on Tuesday night. Not tough at all when you win. Showalter said when asked how it was getting through the game. 6-0, nobody thinks the game is over by any chance. We know them. They're going to play hard and keep trying. And that's the thing about, what I love about Major League Baseball is sometimes you see big gaps in between, the runs in the game. But it's almost like the NCAA, not comparing the two, but those runs can really be cut down very quickly if you don't do what you're supposed to do. It only takes one missed ball, one between the legs ball, one over the head pitch, to really get another team going. So, very good win by Baltimore. The Cardinals and the Cubs were postponed. The Cardinals are 1-0 right now. The Rockies beat the Brewers 5-2. Definitely really surprising for the Rockies. Me and my good friend Chase McFadden, aka Lord Helix, should be back on the show on Friday for all the listeners that are waiting on him. But we talked about this with the Colorado Rockies that they were going to be a team kind of on the bubble. Wanted to really see how they were going to make everybody come together from their acquisitions during the off season. But I know it's just the start of the season, but for the Rocky fans out there, I think they can really be excited. Putting up runs like that, during the games, 5 runs here, 5 runs here. Colorado hit 6 doubles for the second consecutive game Tuesday night on the way to a 5-2 win over the Milwaukee Brewers. The dozen two-base hits matched the mark set by New York Giants over the first two games in 1912. So that's, excuse me, you really can't teach that. That's something that you have to instill in your players. I feel like teams like the Rockies, even the Braves as well. The Braves have had more success in the past, with um, you know, Maddox and all those guys. I could keep on talking, but it's really good to see them be consistent in a new year, especially, and I feel like across the whole board in Major League Baseball, this is a really heavy off season, so I'm really happy to see that everybody's coming together and playing some good ball right now, because that's really all we want to see as fans is good baseball being played. I know they're trying to cut the game down and change the game a little bit, but it's still America's pastime, and we love it for that. The Giants lost to the Diamondbacks. Both of them are sitting at 1-1. The Texas Rangers actually beat the Athletics 3-1. The Athletics are a team that we talked about as well on this show, kind of being a toss-up. The Rangers, even though they're 1-1 right now, we already kind of diagnosed them as not being a contender this year. The Angels and the Mariners were a game that I was really intrigued about just because these are two teams that I feel like can really make a deep run heading to the championship, especially with the Mariners. Felix, him being healthy. The Angels with Mike Trout. He got the big, I think, 6-year, $144 million contract extension. So I think, with everybody getting healthy, even with the Angels and the problems that they're having right now with some of their injuries, if Pujols can remain consistent, C.J. Wilson, he threw 8 sharp innings, and that really is what led them. At the same time, if you look at the 2015 American League West standings right now, you got Houston 1-0, Oakland 1-1, Seattle, Los Angeles, and Texas. This American League West is going to be really tough. Um, I don't exactly know who could come out of there. I think on the show we predicted Seattle. No, I predicted Seattle. But I think the Angels can do something as well if they can remain healthy. They always seem to get hit by that injury bug at the worst times of the year. And just to end it up, folks, we had the Padres going against the Dodgers. The Dodgers lost 7-3. The Dodgers, to me, are very interesting. I love to watch them. I'm a big fan of Kershaw. I'm a big fan of Yasiel. But for me, I want to see what they do throughout the season because I know what Kershaw can do. I know how much he can ball. But at the same time, in that National League West, Colorado, Arizona, San Diego, the Dodgers, San Francisco. So we know that San Francisco is going to be the main problem for them. Colorado, I don't really expect to make a lot of noise. San Diego possibly could. I mean, all of them possibly could. I don't want you to get the wrong impression, folks. I'm not predicting defeat. But, longevity and what we've seen in the past from these teams, especially with San Francisco and what they did last year with Madison Bumgarner and those boys, I definitely think that it's their, the Dodgers and San Fran, it's really their division for the taking. So um, I'm hoping, with some of the moves that they made, getting rid of Kemp, Yasiel Puig stepping up into that main role. I really think they have a chance to make some noise, but they can't burn out Kershaw, and that's one of the things that I talked about on this show a few weeks ago. Was the Major League Baseball pitchers, and how they seem to be burned out towards the end of the season when it's time to make a championship run. And Kershaw is a prime example of that. So I'm hoping to see those guys stay healthy. I really want to see this year from all the teams. I want to see some fluctuation in the pitchers. I want to see what everyone can do. I don't want one person to carry throughout the whole year. And then when we get excited for what they could possibly do in the playoffs, they're worn out or they're burnt out. So I'm hoping that everybody can remain healthy. And it's just the start, folks. But we have some excellent games for you today that I'll let you know about. We got the Twins and the Tigers at 108. The Cardinals and the Cubs are playing at 2:20. Red Sox and Phillies at 7 o'clock. Blue Jays and Yankees. That's my favorite AL team. They got clobbered the other day to start out, so I'm hoping they can make a run and jump back from that. The Yankees play the Blue Jays at 7:05. We have the Mets and Nationals at 7:05. I'm also anxious to see what the Nationals can do, especially with Zimmerman on board. The Pirates and the Reds, and we have the Braves and the Marlins again. Orioles, Rays, White Sox and Royals, Rockies, Brewers again. Indians, Astros, and then we got the Giants and the Diamondbacks. Padres, Dodgers again. Rangers, Athletics again. Then we got the same window, ending it at 10:10 with the Angels and the Mariners. So check those games out, folks. Keep the recap. We'll keep you posted on those scores throughout the entire season, well, at least till the show ends. I'm expecting some big things. We made our predictions, Chase and I, on this show. I want to say maybe it was a few weeks ago now. I have to look back on my recap from the shows, but I did make my picks and I do remember them. So I won't keep mentioning them until it gets closer, and then we'll see where our picks are at. Jumping on to our next topic, folks, I really want to touch on Bo Ryan's comments right now. If everybody, for those who don't know, Bo Ryan is the coach for the Wisconsin Badgers who played Duke in the NCAA tournament finals. And a lot of people have been talking about his comments after the game, him being a sore loser, complaining about the referees, um, you know, things like that. There was a lot of controversial officiating, through the NCAA tournament. There were some suspect calls in the Duke and Wisconsin game, but there were suspect calls in all of the games, folks, and that's what I want to touch on really quickly, I guess, before I dive in into critiquing what Bo Ryan said. To me, the NCAA officials across the board need to get it right, and they need to figure out a way to implement a program that not really mirrors what they're doing in the NBA, but maybe somehow adopt some of the rules that they have, and maybe even change them or maybe adjust them. For the college athletes that you're dealing with, I know it's more maturity, in the NBA, but the hand checking, some of these things are starting to really become a problem in the NCAA with the referees. And I'm only saying that just because of what I saw all year. Not exactly just the tournament, but the entire year, not just March Madness or the conference tournaments. If you look throughout the year, if you paid attention like I have and did my notes, um, you know, 500 plus fouls, called for Wisconsin. Wisconsin was averaging 12.5 fouls per game personally, from conference tournament up, and that's, to me, I'm not saying those fouls, were predicated on anything else. I'm not saying anybody was throwing the game, there's any betting or anything like that going on, lobbying of any sort. I'm not saying that, but in the NCAA, because the rules are not exactly the same, the hand checking amongst other things have really become a problem. But the overall problem, folks, that I've seen, and you might not agree, but I'm hoping that you look at it the way I do and maybe you understand where I'm coming from. The physicality in the NCAA is not shown from every team playing in Division One. Sometimes you have teams, especially for example, the Kentucky and the West Virginia game. During that game, you had one team that was just overly physical. They were bigger, they were stronger, more finesse players, and that was with Kentucky. Carl Anthony Towns, Willie Cauley Stein, Marcus Lee, the Harrison twins, Booker, Tyler Eulis, all the players, even from the smaller ones to the taller guards to the big man, they were just more physical than West Virginia. So you saw a lot of foul calls. And to me, that's been really the common denominator all year. Is if you have one physical team and they are playing another team that's not equally as physical, they will be a lot of fouls called by the referees during that matchup. And that's just how it is. That's just how it is. And that's not exactly fair, because, some teams just don't play that style of ball. Wisconsin, Kentucky, um, even though they didn't do as well, Texas, even West Virginia before they had their, matchup and really going back to what they did all year, um, they're just more physical. A lot of dribble drives, a lot of dribble handoffs, a lot of picks, a lot of pick and rolls. When you have things like that going on, it definitely makes for a more physical game. And it's seeming like, that physicality is not being translated throughout all of Division One, and that's okay. Coaches are different. Coaches have their different styles. But at the same time, as a business, as an entity, the icon that the NCAA is, they really need to sit back and really, get these things together because, I think not they're losing interest. People will always be interested and invested in March Madness, but because of the one and dones and things like that, I don't think their fans are really, unless they're, fans of Coach K, Duke, some of these historical programs. These people are watching these kids and then they're leaving with these kids when these kids go to the NBA. So they really need to get this college game together. I really wish they would adapt some of the rules from the NBA, the hand checking, the backing down, the charges, and the blocking calls. Sometimes I feel like as soon as they hear some body to body contact, they're quick to blow the whistle. And that's totally understanding. If there's some, sufficient contact there, I didn't go to school to be a referee. I'm not going to school to be a referee or ever, have looked at an official, referee handbook, guidebook, whatever, what have you. But at the same time, I've been watching the game for years now. And, I really think they need to take a step back and look back and really just look at the game from the past. On this show, that's what we talk about. We like to talk about the generation differences in the sports, different sports, various platforms. And those generational differences, they really shape and make up something. It's really it's not a gap, but it's a variable that you have to throw in there because it shows the differences in the game and it shows how the different generations look at the game. I don't look at the game the same way that Michael Wilbon or a Skip Bayless would look at the game because we came up during different times. We saw some of the best players in their prime during that specific generation. So I guess the question is, were Bo Ryan's comments good or bad? And, you know, it's hard to say. Anybody can say that he's whining, and, people are always going to say that you're whining and complaining and doing things like that when you lose. And that is true. He wouldn't be complaining or saying anything about this if Wisconsin would have won. But nonetheless, it needs to be said, not just from Bo Ryan, or Coach K or Coach Calipari or Tom Izzo or, Petrino. It's, Billy Donovan. These are all teams that, that coach physical. You know, they get in your face and they bring the best out of their players. But at the same time, 100 fouls called in a game or, you know, just the difference, in fouls, the difference in the Wisconsin and Duke game, I think was like 16-3 in the second half. That just, I'm not saying that Duke didn't get fouled 16 times, but you're telling me Wisconsin only got fouled 3 times? It just doesn't add up. It's not matching up to me. So I think they really, 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 really desperately need to adapt some of the professional rules when it comes to just one-on-one, matchups and the hand checking, backing down, just some of the integral parts of the game because I think these constant and heavy and large magnitude of fouls being called are really, really, really bad and a negative look for the game, NCAA wise. So I think that's definitely something they need to work on. But as far as Bo Ryan's comments go, um, I thought it was really funny. It's I guess this the comment that he made about we don't do the rent a player. I thought that was very interesting. This is the quote that I got. You just have to be able to handle all the hands and the checking. There were more body contact in this game than any other game we played all year, and I just feel sorry for my guys that all of a sudden a game like that. I think they had struggling with that a little bit. We missed some opportunities. They hit some tough shots, but it's just a shame that it had to be played that way. That I can understand completely. And I understand, folks. I know you're going to say, Addison, they lost. That's why they're saying it. I totally understand that. But at the same time, he's hitting on something. He's right there because that was a very physical game. I was watching it while I was at work, of course. Luckily, it was slow, so I got a chance to keep a little eye on it. But, Wisconsin was called for just 2 fouls in the first half, 13 in the second half. As Duke repeatedly drove to the basket. The Blue Devils took 20 shots from the foul line, twice as many as the Badgers. Duke also had to contend with foul trouble. Jahlil Okafor played just 22 minutes in the final, and Justice Winslow also finished with 4 fouls. So at the same time, there were fouls being called both ways. It was just, the shooting fouls, and once you get into the bonus and the double bonus and all that, there's some things about the NCAA that they really need to get right. They need to increase that shot clock, or I mean, not increase it, but excuse me, shorten that shot clock. Um, they just need to get better at controlling the game because sometimes, and I understand sometimes the game needs to be won from the free throw line. I totally understand that. But, not 5 minutes into the game. Sometimes it's just starting to get ridiculous. Some of these teams are in the bonus and the double bonus halfway through the first. And, that's just, nobody wants to see a game like that. You know, but to get on that, I guess the aspect of what he said about we don't do rent a player. This is what he said. Oh, without a doubt, all the seniors that I've had hard to say the word, but every player that's played through the program, we don't do rent a player. You know what I mean? Try to take a fifth year guy. That's okay. If other people do that, that's okay. I like trying to build from within. It's just the way I am. And to see these guys grow over the years and to be here last year and lose a tough game, boom, they came back. Um, that's tricky for me because the rent a player thing. That's a toss up for me because I do wish they would change the rules like that. Some of these players, I do like watching them on the collegiate level, but at the same time, if you know that you're gonna go, no matter how you play, when the Harrison twins came back last year, I thought that was good. I thought they needed to get better, but at the same time, I don't think that they got better this year. So as of right now, it's looking like they're not going to get that much better or any better in college. So maybe they should go ahead and go on to the NBA. That I think that's an honest and true statement. But for what he said about the rented player, I'm kind of teetering on that subject just because it's tough because I feel like if Jaleel or Karl Anthony Towns or Titus Jones or D. Russell from Ohio State. I feel like if some of these really, really, really strong and prominent freshmen, if they would have chose to go to Wisconsin, I'm pretty sure. I'm not necessarily sure, but Bo Ryan wouldn't have turned them down. I don't think. If a guy wants to go to your program, if he wants to play college basketball, the first thing that you ask him is, "Are you going pro next year?" I guess, with the day and times, that's a fair statement to make. But, on the other end of that spectrum, you can't say, or you can't make the renter player comments, because even though they might be able to take their game to the next level, one, they have the opportunity to do so. So your renter player comments need to be taken up need to be taken up with the NCAA. It needs to be taken up with the officials of the NCAA because these coaches are just doing what they want to do for their program or for, it's I'm noticing, and this has just been a trend, and this is, like I said, and like I keep saying, folks, on Q&A, that's what we do. We show the differences from the generations in the game. Back then, and I don't even want to say back then, that sounds bad. But, past sports in the past years, decade ago, whatever you want to say, the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, you know what I mean, the prime. Back then, it was about, creating legacies and creating cultures within these programs. Um, on any level, NBA with the Spurs, um, even the Lakers. And that's why, the people from my generation, they say, Kobe, Kobe, Kobe. And they say the Lakers second, because, for our generation, not saying it's more predicated on the players, but it's not so much about the team. We know the Lakers aren't what they were back when Kobe won, three straight and the five total championships. My generation, we let all that go. After they win it, we let it go. We let it go. It's over. So I think that's the difference between, the game now and the game back then. Even, just taking it back, I'm just making an analogy and the comparison between the NBA and NCAA. But for the NCAA, these coaches aren't, I'm pretty sure when Coach K brought in Jahlil Okafor, Titus Jones, Allen, and Winslow, he didn't think, or he wasn't thinking, where are these guys going to be in 3 years? We could possibly make, a run at the championship, 2, 3, 4 years in a row, whatever. No, he was thinking about next season or, the season, their freshman year, and that's it. Nowadays, these coaches and these players are only thinking about the next year. Because there's so much other turmoil and so many other situations and issues, that could come into play and deflect, their overall goals, injuries, there's different things. So, on that note, Bo Ryan's comments, I guess I'll just not jump on the bandwagon, but, I guess they weren't good for, I guess they weren't good in terms of if they were a shot at Coach K or Jahlil Okafor, or Coach Calipari and the people that he has, on his board. But as far as it goes, being aimed at the NCAA, he was right about that. He definitely was right. Um, just to keep it in NCAA. And first let me say you are listening to Q&A on W.C.C.U. Radio, Coastal Carolina University student radio station. Just want to make sure everyone was listening and tuning in to the right station. And now you know. NCAA tournament recap. We've kind of already touched on that. I don't really want to, keep diving in on that topic because one, as a North Carolina fan, I'm just extremely upset that Duke won the championship, rightly deserved. They totally manhandled Michigan State by 20 points, which was totally surprising to me. I don't think I've ever seen a Tom Izzo team go down like that. But at the same time, Valentine and some of those boys in the post, they just couldn't contend with the athleticism and the finesse play of Winslow and Jefferson. And Coach K's just a genius. The dribble drive, the dribble drive penetration, pop and pick. All those little things that, the subtle nuances that Bo Ryan loves to run, the old school kind of bully ball that he plays was working. So what happened is Coach K went to that 2-3 zone that he learned from coaching with Jim Boeheim when they coached the U.S. men's national team, and it worked. It worked. And, that's why I can't be mad at Coach K and Duke and their success because Coach K, man, he just gets it done. When he went to that 2-3 zone, I was like, what is he doing? And it worked. Can't be mad at that. Some more interesting things that kind of touched me during the tournament. One thing that happened, I guess, after the tournament, Coach Calipari being inducted to the Basketball Hall of Fame. What? I'm not saying that as a hater. I'm not hating on Coach Cal at all. I'm actually a fan of Coach Cal. I'm not somebody that looks at him, I guess, the same way other people do. He's a con man, things like that. Um, but it, I just thought the timing on that was so weird, folks. I wonder if you all thought that as well. I thought the timing was very, very weird. I just thought it was interesting that right after they lose, and let me say that what they also need to get right with in the NCAA, I guess March Madness is what I'm touching on right now. I saw more of Coach Calipari than I really did his players. I saw, some things and some specials that they had. I know that I saw Willie Cauley Stein on there and things like that. But, if you look at Duke, you saw the interviews with Jaleel Okafor and Jay Billis. Um, you saw the interviews about Quinn Cook, his family, and some of the issues and some of the things that he really dealt with and overcame to really get to this position, going from Oak Hill, to Duke. But man, I don't know. That's interesting. I know Coach Calipari he's his persona, and he's an icon and an entity in himself. He's the head coach. He's won championships, but you know that week leading up to the championship, I mean, March Madness is about the players. I understand that the coaches coach these players and things like that, but it's about the players. They're the ones that have to play. So I thought it was very interesting that as soon as that happened, um, you know, as soon as the defeat came to Kentucky Wildcats from Wisconsin, it's almost like right after the game was over, I saw the ticker and it said Coach Cal inducted to the Basketball Hall of Fame. And I was just thinking like, wow, that's a little weird. That's kind of weird for timing, isn't it? I'm not saying him and the NCAA have something worked out. I'm not saying that. A lot of people say things like that. I'm not jumping the gun like that. But at the same time, I thought that was very, very weird. But I digress. We'll see what happens going into next season. Is Coach Cal deserving of that? Totally. Um, does Coach K deserve his fifth title? Of course. Titus Jones had 19 of his 23 points in the second half. You just can't beat that. Some of these things you just can't write. Um, I think Winslow, and I guess touch on the who's the most NBA ready right now, but Winslow I think is a phenomenal player. I love what Jefferson does. He's somebody, he just picks up the slack. I mean, he came in, he had I think 8 rebounds and 3 blocks in like a 6 or 7 minute span, and that's what they needed. They needed stops, they needed rebounds. Sam Decker didn't play his best game of the season, and I think he kind of not took a step back, but a lot of people after that Wisconsin game saw, so after the Kentucky game, saw how he played, saw, I guess what his ceiling could really be. I think he's phenomenal. I mean, 6'7", 6'8", whatever, 6'9", whatever he is, really long guard. I think 6'9". I think he can definitely, have a good career in the next level because he plays that bully ball. He just has to fit in the right team on the right system. He could possibly be like if he can get his handles better, maybe like I'm not comparing him at all to this person, folks. I'm just, just making some comparison to contrast. But, something like maybe like a Kawhi Leonard, somebody who can, finesse and facilitate, from the shooting guard, maybe jump down to the small forward position. Um, and I guess I'll go ahead and get on that subject. Who's the most NBA ready right now out of those teams? Um, I can't really put Izzo in that because he doesn't really have anybody who really showed out to me. Trice, um, you know, Valentine, to me, those guys will always, you can't discredit them because they were coached by Izzo. We saw, what Draymond Green is doing in the NBA right now for the Golden State Warriors, and that's phenomenal. Um, but who's ready? I think Winslow is ready. Jaleel is ready. And those guys for Duke, they really have nothing else to do, so they could leave if they wanted. I think Winslow's ready. I think Jaleel's ready. I even think Titus Jones is ready, folks. And I think he could almost be the most ready out of all of those guys with Gary Allen and the rest of those guys. because he steps up, man, and he plays really big for a small guard. I think he, probably I know he needs to mature a little bit, get his mental prowess up. You always have to get that aspect of the game together, beef his body up a little bit more. Winslow could beef up a little bit more. Okafor could beef up, but also cut weight, if that makes sense. Sometimes he seems a little sluggish, seems a little heavy out there. But out of those teams, I definitely think they're ready. I think Kaminsky can be a lottery pick. Um, I just don't know what kind of role he would have. It depends on what kind of team he could go to. I could see him going to, and they probably won't even have this pick, but like a Golden State, maybe being like a David Lee, a better David Lee, because he's taller. He actually has some, post moves, and he can shoot that deep three, that 14, 15 footer. So I think he'll be great in the NBA as well. But we'll see, as it gets closer to draft time. A lot of freshmen have already made statements that they're going to the league. I know Cliff Alexander, I saw for Kansas Jayhawks, is already planning to enter the NBA draft. So we'll look at the draft stock and we'll see what happens. Um, excuse me. Next, we're going to jump. We just got a few minutes left, about 20. We'll jump to the favorites to win the NBA championship. Right now, the Spurs have won their eighth straight, so people are starting to really talk about the Spurs again. Um, but to me, I think the Achilles heel, and I don't mean to be funny by saying Achilles, but the Achilles injury, the calf injury, some of the other injuries that have been plaguing Tony Parker, Tiago Splitter. Um, I just think if they can't get it right, it's going to be tough for them. To me, Manu Ginobili has been terrible this year, horrendous. Um, he's looked really bad. He's looked really old. So I think the old bug is kind of not finally catching up with them, but like I said, and we talked about this on the show, it's the new wave of the league is really showing itself right now. Russell, Curry, Lillard, Irving, Davis. There's so many players, man. Westbrook, Harden. Oh man. But it's funny because as I'm looking at the NBA future odds to win the 2014-2015 championship, um, which takes place 6/15/15. The Cleveland Clive. Ooh, excuse me. My mother would kill me if she heard that. The Cleveland Cavaliers 9-5, Golden State Warriors 9-5, San Antonio Spurs 5-1, Atlanta Hawks 15-1, Chicago Bulls 18-1, Clippers 22-1, Rockets 25-1, Grizzlies 25-1. To me, I'm not the type of person that's gonna. I can't just quickly jump on what Golden State and Cleveland is doing because all these teams are liable. They're all liabilities in some aspect or some form. For Cleveland, it's their defense. It's their defense, and it's that they don't have a base offensive scheme. They just kind of do whatever and just hope the ball goes in. For the Warriors, it's their big man. It's Bogut. It's David Lee. Um, because the Warriors are great, and I'm not saying they can't win a championship shooting jump shots because they shoot the ball so well that they actually could do that. But you know, if those guys start to get bullied down low, it's going to be really hard for them. Really hard. The Spurs, the old bug, injuries. Atlanta, um, you know, to me, it, it's not the superstar factor because I think they play great team ball. But it's just the inexperience and not being there. And to me, and a lot of people might not see this with Atlanta, but I really pay attention to the subtle nuances of the game and the teams. Atlanta's cocky. They're really cocky. Especially with them winning, I think the 56th win of the season, 58th, whatever, tying, the most all-time regular season thus far through this amount of games. They're cocky. They're cocky, and if they go into Cleveland, whoever they playing like that, they're gonna get beat up. Um, Chicago, I don't really see them making a whole bunch of noise without D Rose. They can do it, but their bench isn't the deepest. So yeah, I think if they end up playing against Cleveland or in Atlanta, whoever they might play. I think they're going to end up going down. The Clippers are just a liability as a team. They have the pick and roll, and they're great. They do great at what they do. But they're wing players, man. It's rough. I don't know how much longer Matt Barnes can do whatever it is that he does. JJ Redick, I don't see them really matching up well with anybody. The Houston Rockets are weird to me because as much as people say that you can't win a playoff series with just one player, oh man, gee golly. I think Houston can definitely do that with James Harden. Man's sick, and he can literally do whatever he wants to do on the court. To me, Dwight Howard's going to be the liability for them. You get him in foul trouble, we'll see. Defensive liability. People are still saying he's one of the best big men in the game. There's really not that many big men in the game, so of course he's going to be one of the best big men in the game. Um, I just see him clogging up that hole, getting in James's way, and I don't see them getting enough sufficient scoring from anybody else besides James Harden in the playoffs. Because if you get James Harden in foul trouble, you might as well call that a game. The Grizzlies, Mavericks, and the Blazers. That's the order there too, folks. By the way, for the future odds. I don't know. I love the Grizzlies, but they haven't been playing the best this year. When I saw that they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think it was like 112 to 89. I was like, whoa. A few years ago, maybe even last year, the Grizzlies would have beat up on them because they just played that bully ball. With Marc Gasol and Zebo down low. Portland, the injury bug. Dallas. Dallas just isn't cohesive. I don't think they know exactly what they want to be. They brought in Amari Stoudemire and they brought in Rajon Rondo, and it really hasn't helped. Um, so I don't really know. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's tough because as these teams keep winning, it's just bumping them down lower and lower. The Pelicans won. That helped them beating the Warriors on last night. It's gonna be tough for them, but as of right now, my favorites my favorite in the West is always going to be the Spurs. I love the Warriors, and I pick them, and I hope that they can get there, so I can see somebody different. But the Spurs they're just that team. They're just that team to beat, and if they can get healthy, they're right back at it. Out of the East, I'm gonna go Cleveland. I just think Atlanta's just a little too. I don't know. I've seen them crumbling in a series, but you never know. They could take it. They could take it. But out of the East, it's either going to be the Bulls, the Hawks, or the Cavs. No one else. Let's see what we have left, folks. See how much time we have left. Um, the comments about Chip Kelly thus far. A lot of people have been saying, you know, Chip Kelly, and it's actually came. I want to find the direct quote first. From LaShawn McCoy, basically saying that LaShawn McCoy said that Chip Kelly doesn't respect his stars. Excuse me. And, you know, is this right or wrong? LaShawn McCoy still hasn't spoken to Chip Kelly. The running back said his former coach called him twice, but he didn't answer. So he has yet to hear Kelly's reason for trading him to Buffalo Bills last month. McCoy said he heard Kelly say to reporters that money was the primary factor. He said he heard Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie said that Kelly thought his shifty running style wasn't ideally suited to his offense. He has another theory. This is what he said. I don't think he likes or respects the stars. I'm being honest. McCoy told the Inquirer on Monday. I think he likes the fact that it's Chip Kelly and the Eagles. That is true. I think that is true. This offseason alone, Kelly traded McCoy, quarterback Nick Foles, wide receiver Jeremy Maclin, and watched them leave in free agency. Longtime Eagles Todd Harrimans and Trent Cole were released a year ago, and the Eagles cut receiver Deshaun Jackson last year as well. It was Deshaun Jackson, a high-flying take off the top of the defense receiver, or the quick, elusive LaShawn McCoy. McCoy said, I don't think Kelly likes that. McCoy's been a Bill for only 27 days, and it's clear that he already has star status among his teammates. Monday marked his first official workout for new coach Rex Ryan. After practice, he couldn't walk a step or complete an interview without being interrupted by players or team personnel looking to have a moment with the outgoing 26-year-old. Um, McCoy said that he has no animosity towards Kelly and that he intends to call his former coach soon. He understands the NFL is a business, but he said he felt disrespected with how the trade went down without his prior knowledge. Those two statements are understandable. Players are always crying about certain things, but they said that they understand that it's a business. Then why are you crying? But I do understand, with the longevity that he had with Philadelphia, and even just the city of Philadelphia, I could understand that he, did feel disrespected because he didn't get the prior knowledge about it. But were the comments about Chip Kelly fair? That's tough. I don't want to say he doesn't respect the stars, but I'm going to change the respect to care. No, he doesn't care about the stars. No, 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 he doesn't care. And I can tell you why he doesn't care for the exact same reasons that we talk about in the show. Not a strong generational difference, but the longevity is not there. And I think that, Kelly, he understands that. He understands that, LaShawn could get hurt in the preseason and it's over. And you spend all that money, then it's over. I totally understand that. I understand with Deshaun. You don't know what Deshaun might say or do. He might get suspended. He might get in trouble. He might get in a fight. That's understandable. I'm not saying judge these guys off that, but taking everything into account, I understand it. I'm not saying it's right, but I understand it. So on that aspect, I can say no. The comments were fair. They're not fair to say about the respect, but does he care about them? No, because I know that he understands that it's a business and that everybody can be replaced. And I think that's how Chip Kelly looks at it. I think a lot of people, Stephen A. was bigging up the aspect of it being about, racism and things like that. I don't think it's about racism. I don't think it's about, lacking respect. I just think it's understanding that these guys can be replaced at any moment. It's no need to pay them, buku loads of money when, last season, we saw the turmoil and situations and negative, press and attention that, the NFL got last year. So it seems like nobody really wants to have a part of that, which I don't know who would want a part of it. But at the same time, I could understand not where Chip Kelly was coming from, not at all, because I'm not in his head. I'm not me saying that. I'm not saying when I say I understand what he's saying, I'm not trying to elaborate or explain or state that I'm in Chip Kelly's head. I know what he's thinking. No, but I don't think he means to disrespect him. But I think he really looks at the game as a business. Do I agree with LaShawn that he loves it being Chip Kelly and the Eagles? Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah. He's the head coach. That's how he was at Oregon. So he wants the same thing for Philadelphia. So that's understandable. I mean, that's easy to put your finger on and pinpoint. But as far as not caring about them, yeah, I can say that. I can say that he doesn't care. And I don't mean with soft heart, worrying about their injury prone and family issues, things like that. I think he cares about that. But as far as replacing players, getting rid of people, trading and releasing them, I don't know. He doesn't care about the players. He doesn't care about those players because he can replace them. And he did. He did just that. So I don't want to say that. I won't say that they're fair. I just, maybe the terms could be rearranged a little bit, but I don't think he cares about the players. But respect, that's tough. Just got a few more minutes, folks. Just want to reiterate that you are listening to Q&A on W.C.C.U. Radio, Coastal Carolina University student radio station with your host, Addison J. Taylor. Tiger Woods is participating in the par 3 contest, folks, and Masters play. Tisk, tisk, tisk. What is there to say about it? I can understand him jumping in that par 3 contest because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that his children would have the opportunity to caddy for him. So I understand Tiger Woods making that move. When I see him going and deciding to play in these things, though, in the Masters play, I know it not exactly is about the kids. I know it is. He's become definitely a big family man, these past couple of years with all the situations, and I guess his physicality really decreasing. He has a 6 and a 7-year-old, so it's definitely time to, step into that father role. So I understand that, and excuse me, I guess that's why I don't look and I'm not as hard on Tiger Woods as most people are because I'm not surprised. I came up, I was born in 91, so I came up, when Tiger was really, really going strong and going hard and winning all the time and going everything, every commercial. His game was booming, everything, the clubs. But, I also watching him and I understood that this man is pushing his body to the limit. Tiger Woods is who made me look at golf as just more as a, mental sport. I mean, it's finesse, it's everything, So he was really maximizing his potential back then. So I'm not surprised to see that his body's breaking down right now. He had a tough swing, he had a hard swing. Everything he did was to the max, to the large magnitude. So I can understand that. It's just the factor of when he says he's going to come back and he doesn't perform. That's what gets me, and that's why I'm kind of troubled about this Masters play. This, the par three contest, that's really nothing. But participating in the Masters, that's something, because sometimes I feel like Tiger. I mean, other golfers have done this. I guess we're just we're putting the spotlight on Tiger Woods, but you know a lot of people say, and I guess I'll just I use Tiger because there's been other golfers, but he's the most prominent and the most popular. Um, that have said that they're going to take time off to get their body right. And then, a few months later, and I think sometimes, what happens with Tiger and some athletes is they say they're going to take the time, and, time waits for no man. And I've learned that as I've gotten older, time goes by fast, whether you're having fun or not. So I think sometimes they say, oh, well, I'll see how I feel in March, and then boom, March comes, and then they're not ready. But see, since you already told people that's when you're coming back, now you have to come back. So, I think on that aspect, I wish he would. I wish he would stop making those statements. Saying that he's going to take a few months off because people already have ideas and their own preconceived notions in their head. So when Tiger first said that he was going to take a step back, it's like, okay, a step back. He's going to be gone a few months, 4 months, 5 months. Okay, April. Okay, it's time to come back. It's weird. I understand it's product placement too, and golf is the product and replacing Tiger Woods there, because people are going to purchase those tickets and they're going to want to come out there even more to see Tiger. Not to necessarily see him, but to see him fail or to see however how he's going to play. So that's more money for the PGA Tour. So it's all not a marketing scheme, but it's very political. And I understand that, and everybody needs to understand that as well. And that's why you don't need to be so hard on Tiger Woods because, you know, I'm not saying he's getting pressure to come back, but I'm pretty sure he gave a small, significant timeline. Somebody from PGA Tour, somebody called him, and hey Tiger, how you feeling? We need you to come back. Whether I don't know if there was money involved, he might have got paid. You never know. There's always under the table things, folks, that go on in sports that you will never know about. We will never know about it until it gets leaked. But I'm pretty sure this isn't the first time. So, on that aspect, I'm anxious to see what he can do. I'm hoping for some big things, but we'll see. We'll see. I know some of those things. I think the par 3 contest starts. Um, Let me see. Let me see. I want to make sure I get this right. Okay. Yep. All right. Yep. So that's finishing up now. The short game will be coming back. Um, and I think Tiger tees off. I want to say tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah. Tiger tees off on Thursday. So we'll see what happens, folks. If you're a fan of golf, look at it objectively. See what Tiger Woods does. But was it a good idea for him to come back now? I don't think so. I don't think he's ready, but we'll see. But for everyone, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I hope you have a blessed week. Enjoy the sun rays. And you were listening to Q&A on W.C.C.U Radio, Coastal Carolina University's student radio station.